Everybody, this is Seth with SethPerler.com. I hope you are doing well tonight. This is an amazing question. I have this email. It says, my 8-year-old is going through the dip. He threw a fit this morning about the school day being so long. He did stuff with tears and at a snail's pace as he finished getting ready for school, which most likely made him late. While this doesn't necessarily affect his grades, I know that it's going to be a season of dragging him to school until Christmas break. What can I do to help his attitude toward the length of the school day improve? It takes everything he has to be somewhat happy at school, but when he gets home to me, he's a mess. I have heard this pattern so much. I am going to give you 8 different ideas that are going to give you a lot of insight into this. This is not a simple issue where there's like one simple answer. This is something where you have to layer on a bunch of answers together to create one great answer that's hopefully going to make you not experience this problem. And the problem really is I think it comes down to how do we not make it a season of dragging him to school until Christmas break, because that's not good for anybody, including your child. So first thing I want to mention again is that a lot of kids go through this. This is not uncommon. I've heard this from so many parents, not just 8-year-olds, but of all different ages. So this is a big challenge across the board. So you're not alone. A lot of kids go through this. So now, one thing you want to consider is at the outset, is that when they're coming home to you, part of what's happening is that there's often more homework to do. So they've just spent an entire day at school. And now, can you imagine if you went to work and then you came home and had to work more? That's what teachers do, but that's not what most people do. And but teachers work very hard like that. Well, kids also, like it's part of our culture. We don't even question it. We think, yeah, they should have homework, but we've just sent them to school all day and then we bring them home and tell them to continue doing schoolwork. What if we had to do that with our jobs? So they are exhausted. So first of all, I want to point that out. Anyhow, here come the 8 things. Number 1, I want you to understand that this is actually a very good opportunity for what's called metacognition. Metacognition has to do with self-awareness. The more self-aware, the more conscious awareness your child has, the more metacognitive, the more mindfulness they have, the more awareness they have of what's going on with their thoughts and feelings and how they affect them, the greater ability they will have to manage their thoughts and feelings as they become adults, and thus have greater joy and peace in life in their future as adults. So this is an opportunity for metacognition. And what I mean by that is that you can have I'm thinking about 2 main talks with your child before these things happen, or at a time when these things aren't happening, when they're not emotional. Have a talk with them. Excuse me, using my timer here. Have a talk with your child about that the dip is going to come. The dip is a pattern for a lot of kids. If your child goes through the dip, tell them, hey, you know what? In mid-October, early November, you're going to go through the dip, which means you're going to get really stressed out again. And this is what happens every year, and it's okay. It's a pattern. How can we work with that? And have that talk with your child. Having that talk before it happens proactively, or even if it's happening right now, having a day on a Saturday or Sunday when nothing else is going on and your child is very regulated, saying, hey, I want to talk to you. The pattern you're experiencing happens. It's normal. It's okay. A lot of kids go through it. What do we do about it? And ask your child that. Now, you also want to have a metacognitive talk about anticipating dysregulation. Hey, when this happens and when certain things stress you out, you're going to get dysregulated. Obviously, you're not going to use the word emotional dysregulation with them, but you're going to help them understand, hey, you know what, when things get overwhelming for you, when there's a lot going on and there's a lot of things to manage, you're going to be having temper tantrums, meltdowns, emotional upsets. So to have a talk about them when they're not experiencing that is really good, and it's going to help improve their awareness and their metacognition, so that when it does happen, they can have a part inside their own mind that says, oh, okay, we talked about this. Yeah, I'm going through this. Okay, cool. I actually have thought about this and I might have some tools. I'm not promising that that's going to like make everything better, but it's a very, very, very key piece of them having better tools to deal with it. Just the tool of metacognition. So that's number one. Metacognition with the dip, like anticipating the dip and anticipating the emotional struggles that they're going to have in dealing with overwhelm. Two, I want you to understand what I'm calling the circle of energy. And a fantastic therapist, Marlo, she's the first one I saw talk about this way. But essentially, the way I don't teach it probably the same way or as brilliantly as she taught it. But essentially, I think of it like there's 100 points of energy that we all have in a given day. Your energy goes to four places: social, emotional, physical, and cognitive. When you've used up those 100 points, you're now going into reserves. When you're going into reserves, that's not good. When you use up your 100 points, you should be going to bed and sleeping. But a lot of times we go into reserves, and a lot of times we put our kids into reserves. Now, you might be taking up more points socially, or emotionally, or physically, or cognitively. Obviously, let's say you're an athlete and you had a physically grueling day. That might have taken most of your points. You may have used 40 points physically and fewer points in the other areas. Anyhow, you get the point. Now, the reason this is important is because you can look at your child and say, where are their resources going? How are they being expended? And what can we do to help our children to conserve their energy? What are their legitimate needs in these different areas? So, understanding the circle of energy, how's their nutrition? Could there be things going on there? How's their sleep? How's their exercise? How are things going socially? Where's the energy going and where do we need to adjust to meet their needs? Three, ask your child. Ask them how what they need and how to get to Christmas break in a better way, and how they can what they need to not be having those meltdowns when they get home from school. Ask what rewards might be helpful. Some kids are motivated by these things, some are not. If it jives with you and it feels like a legitimate reward and it's logical and it makes sense, consider that. So, what are the things that might motivate them, if those are the things that will motivate them? Number four, you mentioned that they're moving at a snail's pace in the morning with tears. Part of what you might be able to do is to automate the morning process as much as possible and the evening process the night before. Are things into the backpack the night before? Are they in a box by the door or in the car already the night before? Can you automate that process in any ways? How can you make the process easier? Can you take on some of that? I'm not encouraging you to enable your child, but sometimes it's not enabling. If your child has done all this work all day, they're exhausted, and it's easy for you and it takes you 2 seconds to help them get themselves reorganized, can you just get it back in the backpack and in the car for them? Is that if that's not enabling, maybe you're going to take on that or take on certain steps that might help things, might help everybody move a little bit easier. 5, take as much off your child's plate as possible, and that is related to what I just said with number 4, but in other ways too. If your child forgets to put their name on their paper, and that happens all the time, and you're choosing your battles, and that's not a battle you want to fight, just jot their name on their papers for them and go through everything really quick and make sure the name's on everything. Anything that's going to take as much off their plate as possible. If they do chores and they can't get all their chores done, and you can minimize the chores into smaller steps because you want to teach them responsibility, but you can make them really micro chores and you can take on the rest of that, but they're actually doing something to participate and you're comfortable with that, do that. Anyhow, the point is think about ways that you can take stuff off their plate, because their plate is so filled. What we put on these kids' plates nowadays, it's so much. It is absolutely overwhelming. We're just training them for overwhelm as adults. So how can we change that? 6, timers. When your child comes home and then has to do these things, and meanwhile I just set my timer because I'm cooking potatoes. So when your child has to do their work, it feels abstract and overwhelming. So using timers and using a plan, creating a simple plan, that you've probably seen my today's plan, So creating a plan that's going to help things feel chunked down and not as overwhelming. When our kids are abstractly thinking, "Oh, I got this homework to do. I just want to play. I'm done with school. I just need time to myself. I just need time with family. I just need time with friends. I just need time to decompress." When they're thinking that and they think, "Oh, but I have this homework thing or this stuff to do tonight." It's overwhelming and it's abstract. Abstraction is overwhelming. The more concrete you can make it, the better. The more you can make it concrete. The things that make it concrete is having a plan and using a timer. Those are two ways to make it more concrete so that they're not as overwhelmed. So you chunking, making things more concrete, that can help in this situation. Now, another thing that I will recommend to a lot of families is actually to plan days off. They are overwhelmed. And if you know that, and October is a very long month, there really aren't any days off at any schools in the country in October. That's very common unless you have conference release exchange days. Um, Most schools, you have 5 weeks in a row with not a day off. That's a very long time when you think about it. That's 25 school days, and then you have your 2 weekend days. But that's a lot of time. But plan in days off. Maybe strategically, you can think in mid October, it might be good to give our kids a Wednesday off, and you call in sick for your kids and you plan a fun day or a relaxation day at home, or you guys go out and do something. That may not jive with some families. Some families may think that that's a bad thing to do, but when you look at the overall big picture of your family's mental health, it can it can be actually a small price to pay, especially if you're anticipating and you're planning for it. So consider planning a day or two or three off per semester. Maybe they're on Fridays so that you have a couple of 3-day weekends during the semester that you've anticipated. It'll probably help your kids not get as sick. It'll probably help you not get as sick. But really consider if you can take days off, and you can also think of it as like a get out of jail free card. Maybe you give your kid literally a piece of paper, and this can even be done with teenagers, and it's a get out of jail free card. Maybe it's 1 or 2 days a semester where they can say, "I cannot do this today. Here it is. I'm using it today." So consider an idea like that. And finally, I want to end with this really positive one. And Dr. George Betts out of UNC, he was one of my professors. And one of the things that he talked about was what he called a super Saturday. And I don't care what you call it, but the concept of a super Saturday is this: plan in days that, let's say it's a Saturday where every person in the family gets their own Saturday and they get to plan the whole day from morning to evening, just a family day of fun where you all don't do anything but have fun together. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, in between, movies, events, whatever you guys want to do, concerts, or relaxation, outdoor activities, whatever you guys like to do as a family, you plan in this super Saturday where your child gets to plan the whole day. You get to take a day where you plan the whole day for the family. Your other child gets to plan a day. Anyhow, it doesn't have to be a Saturday again. The point is, and it can be just an evening or whatever. But the point really is plan in fun time with your child where you're not talking about school. Okay, so they have to sort of, in your child in their own head has to be able to compartmentalize things. And one of the things you want them to be compartmentalizing isn't just things like school and homework and stressful things, but you want them to have a pocket in their brain for family fun. Oh yeah, Super Saturdays, or oh yeah, family traditions, or oh yeah, movie nights, or oh yeah, some sort of times when you have family connection that is uninterrupted, particularly by the stress of school. Anyhow, I hope those ideas help you. I hope that your journey from now until winter break is as smooth as possible, and I will see you soon.